Welcome to the Down to Learning Show podcast series, episode 88, with independent learning tech analyst John Lay. Today I interview Anders Willumsen, CEO of the Eurekos LMS, about the state of customer education in Europe. You can find more of our fiercely independent content at talenttolearning.com. Well, welcome back, listeners, to the Down to Learning Show podcast. On this show, I'm fortunate to interview the world's leading experts in extended enterprise learning solutions from both the vendor and the practitioner perspectives. And today's no different. From the vendor expert side of the fence, I'm absolutely thrilled to have Anders all the way from Denmark here to give us a perspective on the advances and the state of customer education in Europe. What's the current state? What are trends, biggest challenges, leading industries, countries? How's the war having an impact? What verticals, content preferences? What about GDPR, measurable success stories, and more? These are just a few of the things we're going to talk about today with Anders. Anders, welcome to the Town to Learning Show. It's sure great to have you here.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for having me. It's
All
great to be
right.
here.
I can't wait to hear about customer education in Europe, especially as we're recording this. SEDMA is going down right now in London,
Yeah.
as all the European leaders are all gathering to talk about it. So listeners, if you're following along on the talentedlearning.com blog, which Anders is doing and you should be doing also, you may recognize the Eurekos name from the last couple of years in our Talented Learning Awards. This year, they made the top 10 customer education list in 2024. It's no easy feat to get on that list. I mean, there's hundreds of customer education LMS providers that want to be on that list. But one of the reasons that Eurekos made it up there is that earlier this year, I helped one of our SaaS software clients define their LMS requirements and conduct a buying process and buy an LMS. And after a diligent search process, they ended up licensing Eurekos. And I had the opportunity to help with the implementation and the configuration and deployment and the integration of that system to my clients' hundreds of organizational customers. And during that process, I just became impressed with Eurekos's unique perspective and technology and overall solution. They just come at customer education differently than we have in the United States or in North America. And I knew I had to get Anders to shine a light on that rapid progress and that perspective in the marketplace, and to educate us all, because there's a lot of lessons that we can learn over here to really shine up our solutions and approach to customer education. So, with that intro, Anders, let's start at the top. Tell us about Eurekos, your place in the the global LMS market. Let's start there.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Well, we about 12 years old now, the company. And we started out creating an LMS for digitization of content, basically for higher ed and companies. But then like 5, 6 years ago, and actually being very inspired by what was happening in the US market. And as you know, in most software categories, the US market is way ahead of the European market. In some others, it's different, but in this case, it was true. So customer training has definitely been led by American companies. We have some great competitors that are driving the market, and so we changed our strategy, and since then we've been entirely focused on that. So customer training education, it's obviously also partners, and it's targeting nonprofits, any type of company that has a product or a service that you basically need to digitize and you know broadcast and educate on, right?
Oh,
Um,
great.
yeah. So, but yes, as you said, we are from Denmark, and therefore we've been here a while. We have a great insight into the European market. We work with almost any country in Europe, as well as the US and Far East.
Cool. Well, let's dig into that. Tell us about what the European market for customer education looks like. You get to operate on both sides of the pond, so you're like in a
Yeah,
great position here to help highlight the differences. So maybe start off
yeah,
with what it looks like. How important is it? How on fire or not on fire is it? How does it compare to employee-led training? Any or all of that would be
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. You know, I think just the fact that you exist and others like you in the US and hardly anyone in Europe says a lot about the market, right? There hasn't been the same focus on customer education training in Europe as there has been in the US for a long time. But it's absolutely blowing up right now. There's a huge interest over here, as you know, in London. SETMA is undergoing right now. We also there talking to other leaders and in the industry and companies, organizations. Um, I think in Europe, the difficulty is that when you are a European market, you have to, no matter which country you're in, whether you're in Germany or England or you're in Denmark, you have to be able to address every country and every market. And very often they are different. There are different laws. Even though we are now a European market, there still are differences, right? But most importantly, we do not speak the same language. Whereas in the US market, it is one market, one language, one approach. And you can pretty much target the entire market, right? So it makes it more difficult here to get programs up and running, and it makes it more difficult to get started to be able to prove value and scale fast when you have such a complex, combination of languages, currencies, different laws, different approaches, even cultural differences in how you approach training and education from the south of Europe to the north of Europe. So it's not as easy getting it going over here as it is in Europe, US, sorry, where you have one market and you can target a massive customer segment, right?
Hmm, interesting. So how does that manifest
So
itself, Anders? Is there globalized companies in Europe that do business in all the different countries, and then when they um, basically come in with customer education, how does that work then? Do they buy it for all? Do they look at it then? Do they have to look at it more myopically and say, okay, we're just going to roll it out in Germany? So how do they get over that barrier of all those languages and currencies and regulations?
yes, that's a great question because it is really difficult even to do a test. You actually have to go across quite a few countries to start with. You have to address languages right up front. It's also one of the reasons we are, yeah, I think we now have 135 languages in our system, right? And we can actually now clone and train. Clone training is made in our system to the same languages. It's just imperative to get something up and running. You have to address it first, not later. Whereas I also worked in the US for 12 years, and I was there. You first create everything based on the US market, and then later on you start expanding globally. You address languages later. Here it's upfront right away. So that is for sure something you must start with.
Are there some countries more advanced than others in Europe right now? Uh, or is it equal
Um,
across in terms of customer education? What are your thoughts there?
No, I think for sure. It's first of all, also I think the vendors drive it, right? It's what I also see in the US market. There's so much innovation going on because when you have a great competitive pool of vendors, it does spur automation, sorry, innovation, right? And it's the same here. So you may have we are very focused on it in Denmark. There could be another one in Norway. There could be another company in Germany and so on. But it's not often that you meet right away. Whereas if we had 10 of us in Denmark alone, we would be far more competitive much early on, right? So, but having said that, I think to your question, I think Northern Europe probably is more advanced in that sense, without hoping I'm not insulting anyone in south of Europe. But um, we are smaller countries up in Northern Europe, and for that reason, we have to take on tools like this, automation, and digitization much early on as well, because we have to be competitive, right? And for that reason, there's a lot of innovation, a lot of much earlier on than later, because we have to, right? So that does promote, this that we have to take on new tools, and in this case, it's a digitization, right, of customer training, events, anything you can imagine in terms of how do you drive your entire channel or your customers, right? Um, yeah, so there's a big difference, I would
How
say.
about industries? What are the leading industries? Is it still software like it is over here, or
That's It's definitely a big segment for sure, yeah, but it's not as dominant as it is in the US. Here you have a very wide variety of nonprofit organizations, training companies, manufacturers. Um, I would say the public entities of following after, yeah, and it's more like these consulting training companies, manufacturers, and software companies that are driving the market over here.
And what are some of the biggest challenges?
There is no simple answer to that, right? That's what's special about it. No, but in Europe for the past 3 years after the war expanded, since Russia took Crimea and then they expanded to the rest of Ukraine, war has absolutely been in the forefront of everyone's mind here. We are so
Hmm.
close to it and we are impacted by it, and now with the situation in Israel, it's even more obvious, and it's really something you have to address here. And it's changing everything. It's changing policies, it's changing laws, it's changing especially people's attention to security in a big way. So security has always been something that's important in software, right? But more than ever now, it's becoming one of the absolute first things that you have to qualify yourself by is what are your capabilities? It's not enough to say, well, we are compliant. You actually often have to be certified as we are. So we have 3 ISO certifications now, and we actually are the first company in Denmark that just got a brand new uh, cloud security ISO certification 27017. And the reason for that is uh, many, many, many companies are now coming to us asking, can you prove that you truly are, compliant, and that you have control of your security and your processes, your data privacy, and so on, right? So that is a very big thing here, and we see that much more as a demand here than in the US. Same with pen tests. We often have to document how we improve our security protocols and our processes. So that is something that I would say the war has definitely encouraged that, right? The other thing in Europe that is a difference between there's much higher focus on here in Europe is GDPR, so data privacy. And lately now, ESG, environmental, social, and governance, has actually been mandated by law that you have to have a strategy for that and you have to have programs implemented, starting obviously with the biggest companies first, public traded companies, and then moving down the market. So um, as far as I know, is not mandated by the government in the US yet, but it isn't here now. So we as an vendor had to immediately address that. We have been for a while, but one of the things we have done is that we are now requiring that all our vendors are using green energy only, as an example. So we literally have to go through every single vendor that we use and making sure, are you using green energy? Can you document it? What's your ESG policy and so on? So that is also a huge thing over here, and something that, you know, American companies coming into Europe have to address. And it's both our customers requiring this, but it's also our customers' customers, right? So there is no way that you can escape this. You have to address that here.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
That's a whole big blind spot for me. So tell me about the
yeah.
security. So, I mean, I obviously in more their security. What's the concern? Is it the theft of data? Is like what are they
It's
worried about with that?
it's we have seen a huge increase in hacking attempt in Europe following the war. And it's yeah, I'm guessing, but most of the stories in the press obviously is regarding Russia trying to either look for information or undermine people that are supporting Ukraine and so on. It's basically war, and cybersecurity is a big part of it. So that is driving companies in a totally new way to both require security trainings for the employees, but also um, changing their own policies, changing the how we address this in Europe right now. And for that reason, they're looking for us to help them because they also have to improve their protocols and their processes towards their customers. It's not enough anymore that you can just offer, customer training. Here you go. Here's a nicely wrapped training, and here's some events and so on. Sign up. It's, for instance, multi-federation has now become a big thing where multi-tenancy is one thing, but under each tenant, you have to be able to address each company individually, multi-federation, right? So they can use their own SSO mechanisms or whatever that may be. That's becoming very important for this reason. So we often set up having discussions with our customers and their customer security requirements. How do they deal with that? And so this partnership that we have, and one of the things that I think where we stand out is our ability to enable our customers, but also help them with their customers, and how do they deal with this? How do they deal with their data privacy requirements and GDPR and ESG and security and so on, right? And then more importantly, once you get that all working with your customers and it's set up, you also have to ensure now that the LMS, as you know, has to work with all other systems in-house, right? The data flowing to and from the LMS, and that works too. That's a big thing over here. So we seem to be spending quite a lot of time talking about a lot of other things than just the LMS and the function inside of an LMS. It's become quite technical, complex, very complex, and it's spreading to other things like e-commerce, right? E-commerce models, where the whole market is changing how you are charging for training. It's not enough just to, let's say, we are selling a training, one off here, one off there. It could also be subscription models. It could be a combination, preferably different for this customer group and different for this market and different currency, and so on. And so this is what we see that, and obviously we're sitting in a highly complex region with so many different markets and countries and so on. So that will look different, right, than if you're sitting in the US. And actually what I experienced myself when I was in the US market, sitting over there, looking at a massive market, there was plenty of room for growth. And I only had to address the market in one way.
Wow, that is really interesting. A couple of takeaways. One, the sales cycle's got to be a ton longer for any technology purchase in Europe. It sounds like till you cross over all these ISO challenges and data challenges.
Yeah, the testing phase can get longer here for sure, because you would have to probably do a couple other scenarios that you have to go through and test, right? But also the security aspects of it takes longer to go through that. So yeah, I would say when we compare Europe to US, there's probably longer cycles over here.
Mm-hmm. What do you
Yeah,
think? I think the reverse is true too. So, as a recovering LMS sales guy, I'm thinking, okay, how if I
yeah,
was going into Europe, I would really get beat up bad, because I wouldn't know any of this, and so all these,
yeah,
American companies are probably struggling to go over there and understand that and
yeah.
to compete effectively in that. Do you think that's true?
Yeah,
If you don't know
I
this
do
stuff,
think
how can
so.
you win? Yeah.
No, I mean it definitely is an advantage for us at this point, at least competing here, just as much as it is we have a disadvantage in the US where we don't have an office yet over there in the US, right? So absolutely, there are disadvantages. You would definitely benefit from having feet on the ground in Europe and understand what's going on in the market here as a US
Mm.
company. Yeah,
If
I,
you're a U.S. company and you're doing work, Anders,
yeah.
all through North America, but then also in Europe, you're subjugated to all these same regulations. Is that true or no? Or is it less if
You
you're an American company doing business in Europe versus being
oh
in Europe
no.
as a
Oh no, one of our customers is a German training company. They specialize in GDPR and only that, data privacy. And all of their client base, about 100 different large American brands, doing business in Europe. They work with their daughter companies, their subsidiaries in Europe, and all they're doing is trying to help them understand how do you have to address the European market from that perspective, making sure they're compliant, because the fines here are so extreme. So if you don't comply to the European laws, uh, any one of them for that matter, you can risk the huge fines. Yeah, and
Wow.
so that is a genuine business that so many of our customers of the training companies, an example, they advise American companies on how do you have to address business here. That's one thing, let alone, languages, culture, you know, different approaches to different markets.
Mm,
Yeah,
wow. Different
yeah.
markets, different countries, different cultures, different languages. How does that translate to content, Anders? What are the content trends in customer education? Is it all electronic? Is it all ILT? Is it different in different places? Like, how's that look?
Um, I think in that sense is somewhat similar to the US market, where right now many companies are just getting to the point where they are thinking at how do we digitize it, right? How do we go from doing face-to-face meetings, Zoom or Teams calls, and customer events, and then digitizing that. And many companies fortunately have a lot of material themselves that they can use. And I think the whole idea is that you have to crawl, walk, run, right? You have to start with what you have essentially, and be able to come up and create something really engaging and interactive based on that, and then go from there and make it more and more advanced. And I think you don't have to start and create an extremely advanced training initially, where you have to use AI for content creation and you have to make it super advanced, because the point is you're going to have execution problems before that. So you first have to figure out how do we actually logistically and the process behind it, getting the systems to work to even be able to deliver it effectively, right? Um, so we see so many companies come to us with a lot of content, or even content from other LMSs, and that they would like to start with and then go from there. And that's also something when we talk about AI and using that in that sense, right? Content. You have to be quite careful. A lot of our customers have proprietary information, and there's obviously private versus public AI services available. Um, so if you start having your own proprietary content, you start mixing it in information you get from, let's say, public available, information that have been generated by anybody. You're starting to mix things that are very concrete, very accurate, with something that be less accurate. Um, and the other thing is that if you really have a lot of proprietary information, you definitely do not want to use public AI. You have to use private AI solutions, right? So you do not start educating your competitors, right? Um, so so there's so much talk about this going on right now here, whether should we use AI, what should we use it for, right? And how do we use it? Um, Most importantly, right? And so I see a delayed effect in that sense in terms of using AI for this purpose. And to us, it's not important that AI is here to help us generate content, because there's so many different ways you can create content. For us, the importance of AI is that you can actually make things far more efficient. So in terms of content curation and automation and creation of trainings and so on. So that's what we're looking at. We want to change things so that things are far more efficient, um, better automated, rather than actually using it for content. Um, and I know that's very unlike a lot of our competitors, right? So I'm not sure whether this is the right strategy or not, but it's definitely what we believe in.
Yeah, you got a different set of headwinds. Is there laws already on the books about AI in Europe?
It's coming,
Oh, it's coming.
exactly. Oh yeah, that's there already one is called the AI something something Act in Europe. So yeah, it's definitely coming, and you can even now be ISO certified also and that's coming as well, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, it's something that it's usually this when you have highly complex areas such as ESG or data privacy, GDPR, etc. You will see, for instance, the European Union start to look at, well, how can we regulate it, or can we make it more safe, right? How do we protect our citizens? How do we protect our borders? So yeah, I think you guaranteed will see that coming.
Well,
Yeah.
I heard they're using
Yeah.
ChatGPT to help write that AI law. I don't know if that's true or not. Yeah.
I,
So
I
what's
I wouldn't I wouldn't be surprised, you know. Oh, I mean, of course we use it ourselves too. From time to time we have to check some things, but um, yeah, it's great to look things up in for sure. Chat GPT and all those things. Yeah,
all right? We're quickly running out of time, Anders. Tell us
yeah.
what's your favorite success story in European customer education? You got one you can share real quickly?
Oh yeah, we work with so many different types of companies, and one that we're starting to work with is the European Space Agency, and they came to us again. They have, as you can imagine, a space agency has extreme security requirements. And in their case, they actually need an on-premise uh, solution, which we then delivered to them. And that's a very exciting thing to be working with them across 32 countries, almost simultaneously on their new academy, and then yeah, how to work with something like them is completely different than working with a company or another type of nonprofit organization, right? Um, Another company that we've had a lot of success working with is Swiss Re, which is a reinsurance company, one of the largest in the world. They wanted to take their physical customer events, integrate them into an LMS, so it was all managed. Basically, that any type of customer activity you can imagine is all run inside of the LMS and managed by the LMS. And so we did that with them to sign that in, and they have had a great deal of success doing that now, where it's part of from onboarding all the way through to the entire customer journey, basically. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's
Um,
good examples.
yeah.
Good
Yeah.
examples. All right, last question.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to a European organization that hasn't taken the leap into customer education? What's the first step for them to get going? What would you advise?
Oh, I would. Hmm, I definitely would look at the biggest pain point that they have, right? First, what is that? Um, is it that you have a broken onboarding process? That are you losing customers because they do not understand your product, or partners for that matter, right? So basically, figure out what is the lowest hanging fruit. Where can you have the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time without having to across too many markets and too many countries and languages, but keeping it, as you brought up earlier, right? Short, just small and very concise, right? That would be number one. And then having very clear and defined goal. What's your success criteria in a year from now?
Hmm. Sage advice. Anders
Yeah.
Willumsen. As it turns out, that part of the advice didn't change across the pond. You know that
Yeah. Yeah.
advice is good everywhere in the whole world, as it
Yeah.
turns out
Exactly.
with the customer
Yeah.
education. So
Yeah.
this is a
Yeah.
really interesting conversation, Anders. I've been in LMS companies and in the LMS industry now for 25 plus years. I've watched
Yeah.
American company after American company try to expand into Europe with
Yeah.
varying degrees of failure. Um, Hardly ever, wildly successful. It's always mildly
Yeah.
successful at the very best, over all those years. But a conversation like this just brings it home that just it's different. And to understand
Yeah.
culturally and all the things that we talked about today is all in addition to customer education, is all in addition to LMS. And it really makes it for Europeans that it's important to have somebody that understands that. And for our American and North American companies, it's really important to realize that it's not America over there. So I think everybody
Yeah.
has an opportunity here to get smarter and to do better. But I think this
Yeah.
conversation's really highlighted that you've got a lot more to
Yeah.
worry about than a lot of the organizations over here to to make customer education happen. And so that's interesting, and it's a little bit scary, but it's also a great opportunity
Yeah, it is.
for you, and I guess for other
Yeah.
European companies that are riding the front of
Yeah.
the digital wave. So,
Yeah.
Anders, thank you very much for stopping by on a busy week and sharing your knowledge. It was great to have you here.
Likewise, John. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Talented Learning Show. Hope you found value, and we'll see you on the next. Have a great day. You can find more of our fiercely independent information at talentedlearning.com, and you can check out Anders and Eurekos's LMS at eurekos.com. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you on the next.